everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We join you today from the North Central Research Station at Lahoma, where the annual wheat tour is just getting underway. There are a lot of stops on the tour this year. First up for us is a discussion on wheat disease. Here's SUNUP's Dave Deacon and our Extension wheat pathologist, Bob Hunger.
It's been an interesting year when it comes to wheat diseases. And Bob, last time we talked to you a few weeks ago, there really wasn't much disease pressure across the state, but things have changed.
They definitely have changed. Leaf rust and stripe rust have just pretty much exploded across the state, and some of the leaf spotters, especially Septoria leaf blotch, has stayed around and continued to move up the plants as well.
Why is that so important to treat for those diseases?
Well, if you have a variety that has resistance to all of them, you can still maybe get by with that. Mm-hmm. The problem is not all varieties have resistance to all three of those, and all three are pretty active. Usually powdery mildew is in that group, and it's come around some too, but it's still not as widespread as the other three. But it's getting a little late for fungicide application. And it's kind of questionable about whether there's enough time to put a fungicide on before you have to harvest. And growers need to look real carefully at the labels, because some go by a length of time in days between when a fungicide is applied and when you can harvest. And you got to make sure that you're in compliance with that in order to put the fungicide on.
We've been talking about those specifically, but there's been some other pressures showing up in wheat.
Well, given this type of year with this much moisture and cool weather, of course that's going to favor leaf rust, stripe rust, and the leaf spotting diseases. But typically in years like this, we also see some things such as take-all root rot, mm-hmm. which can cause white heads and can be a problem. Another one would be fusarium head scab, which is a problem every year in northeastern Oklahoma, but not so much across the rest of the state. But having this type of moisture during flowering with cool temperatures favors that disease as well. And then finally, we do occasionally see bacterial diseases, black chaff and bacterial leaf streak. And I have not seen any of those diseases yet, but it's a little bit early to be seeing them here. And I did get a report that they're seeing the bacterial leaf streak in mid-Texas, across the Blacklands area, Texas and whatnot. So they could be on their way as well this year with the kind of year we're having. But that is a seed-borne disease, so if you do end up getting that disease, you don't really want to keep seed from that to plant the next year, because then you'll be continuing it the next year as well.
So it's very timely that producers are out in their fields talking with their county educators and really being reactive almost?
Right, they need to be scouting for the disease and watching for it. There's not a lot they can do with that, especially for the take-all and the bacterial diseases, right. But you wouldn't want to keep seed with fusarium head blight. Of course, there are fungicides that can be applied for that to help. There are some resistant varieties, and you can harvest a little bit different, set the blower to blow the bad seed out, so on and so forth. So there's some things you can do, but yeah, you're right. You want to make sure and see if you do have the disease before you start looking at that.
Well, maybe next year it'll be a typical wheat year in Oklahoma, but I guess they don't make those.
Typical is atypical.
There you go. Okay, thank you very much, Bob Hunger, wheat pathologist here with Oklahoma State University.
We are here at Lahoma with Misha Manuchehri, our extension weed specialist. And Misha, you're talking to growers a lot today about a lot of different things. Let's start with the grassy weeds in wheat and what kind of guidance you're giving them.
Yeah, so we're just kind of starting season long, since we're at the end of the season and we're thinking about next year now. So we're gonna hit on some of the critical grass weeds, Italian ryegrass, all of our brome species in Oklahoma. We'll talk about barrel rye, jointed goat grass. We'll try and hit them all and discuss what's working and what's not working as far as management practices.
Are there any particular challenges with all the rain that we've had this spring?
Yes. So our wheat crop looks pretty happy and it's enjoyed the rain, and so have the weeds. Anytime we have that moisture, it can be a challenge. It can also be a positive. When we think about herbicides and herbicides working in plants, actively growing weeds, we typically get a better kill from our herbicides. So yes, they're there, but if we've made an application, in many cases we're getting good kill.
We're hearing about a new herbicide resistant system to control grasses. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we, second to the Clearfield system, we actually have a new herbicide tolerant wheat that is available for growers in Oklahoma called coaxium production systems. And it allows us to control many grass weeds once they've emerged. So we're going to talk about that technology today. We've been looking at it. This is our third year on the research side, and share what we've learned as growers incorporate it into their fields.
Probably a lot of questions about that, I'm sure.
I think so. I think that's going to be a popular topic. Yeah.
Let's talk about the broadleaf weeds and kind of the management strategy there and some of the questions that you're getting.
Yeah, so not everyone wants to control grasses. Some folks, their priority is the broadleaf weed management. We don't have a lot of new active ingredients on the herbicide side, but we do have a lot of new products. So it's always good to just kind of go through what's new. It's hard to keep up with all the different trade names of products and let them know what's working. Also talk about resistance. We do have herbicide resistance in the state, and some products that once were effective aren't as effective.
As we wind down the growing season and get geared up toward harvest, what kind of guidance do you have for producers now?
As we talk about herbicide resistance and your grass weeds go to seed, I would say if you have any interest in sending in samples to be screened, it's a great time to collect seed when your wheat grain is ready. A lot of those grassy weed seeds are also ready, and you can send those into the lab and we can screen if there's any challenges that you've been having. So a good time to scout and send samples off.
And then that will help inform everything for the next go
Absolutely.
around.
Then we have some of our questions answered and we can plan.
Terrific. Okay, Misha, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Many Oklahoma pastures are very, very wet. After the wet winter and a lot of rain this spring, in many cases there's standing water out in the pastures. Producers need to be concerned about a couple different maladies, diseases that can occur due to that situation. One of which is the lameness that shows up in cattle, commonly called foot rot. Foot rot is basically an infection that occurs between the toes of cattle caused by a bacteria. One of the other problems that I think we need to be concerned about is the fact that we've got so much standing water, we're going to have a lot more insects, biting mosquitoes, horseflies, ticks, the particular vectors of the disease anaplasmosis. In both cases, these things certainly can cause some real problems, not only health-wise, but economically to the producer. When you visit with your veterinarian about those situations, if you've got lameness showing up in cattle, or you're concerned about perhaps preventing anaplasmosis transmission in your herd, we want to keep in mind the beef quality assurance guidelines as we're treating those cattle or preventing the diseases. If the veterinarian is recommending an antibiotic treatment, say for foot rot, and it's injectable, well, again, let's follow those beef quality assurance guidelines closely, put that injection in the neck region, and keep a really accurate record of when you gave that injection, what was given, and write down the withdrawal date for that particular product, so that there's no possibility that you decide to market that particular cow before the time that the withdrawal date is over. Also, if you're visiting with your veterinarian about the prevention of foot rot or anaplasmosis and the discussion of including an chlorotetracycline in the feed or mineral mix, that comes up. We want to remember that the law now requires that we have a veterinary feed directive for the use of antibiotics in the feed for the prevention of these kinds of diseases. So as we go through this summer, really take and be careful about the use of these kinds of treatment products, follow your veterinarian's instructions to the letter, look at the label on those products, and make sure that we're not introducing one of these violative residues into a cow or a stocker calf that we accidentally sell at a time before that withdrawal time is over with. I think if we do that, it'll not only help us in our own situation, but the entire beef industry. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Hello, Wes Lee with your weekly Mesonet weather report. With all the rains we have received this spring, the soils in the main part of the state remain very wet. This map shows percent plant available water down to a 4-inch depth through May 14th. The dark green color for all areas except the western panhandle indicate moisture levels at or near 100% of capacity. They have been that way for several weeks now. The result of high soil moisture, along with a seemingly endless influx of moisture-rich air from the Pacific and Gulf of Mexico, have resulted in high humidity levels. This map from Wednesday morning shows blue areas where relative humidity was 80 to 100%. On the good side, high relative humidities keep wildfires in check, but on the downside, it also provides ideal conditions for plant disease development. Fortunately, the Oklahoma Mesonet has 3 tools available to help citizens monitor and deal with disease issues. The first of these is the Grape Black Rot Advisor. It uses a temperature and humidity former to measure infection hours. Once the number of infection hours measures above a certain threshold, then it is considered a risk day. This map shows that southeast sites have had the highest accumulation of risk days to date. Broken Bow has recorded 36 risk days this spring. The second management tool is the Peanut Leaf Spot Advisor. This model determines the number of hours when relative humidity is above 90% while in a temperature range of 60 to 86 degrees. The 14-day map from Wednesday again shows the southeast part of the state would have the highest risk of peanut leaf spot. The third disease model was developed for pecan growers in the state. It helps to determine when pecan scab is most likely to be an issue. Once again, relative humidity and temperature play a part in determining infection hours. The 14-day pecan scab map shows very little yet because we have been a little too cool for this model to trigger infection hours. A nice feature of each of these 3 tools is their ability to forecast up to 3.5 days. Indicated here is the peanut leaf spot infection hours for Fort Cobb. The red area was the last 14 days as of Wednesday, and the blue indicated the short-term forecast of infection hours. Another feature of the tools is the ability to compare disease conditions this year with previous years. For example, this chart for Guthrie shows that grape black rot this year, shown by the red line, might have started much earlier than it did last year, indicated by the blue line. Lastly, and probably most importantly, the 3 tools have a fungicide spray advisor built into them. By plugging in a few variables, such as your last spray date and your location, the model will tell you when the next application would be advisable to help prevent disease development. This is an example of the Grape Black Rot Spray Advisor for Barneyville. Check out these and all of the Mesonet Ag tools that are available on our website at www.mesonet.org. That'll do it for this week. See you again next week on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We are here now with Brett Carver, our wheat breeder for Oklahoma State. And Brett, this is kind of our annual conversation where we get up to speed on what's going on with the varieties and kind of what's on the horizon. So let's start with Double Stop and the latest.
Double Stop's been a very good variety for us and for the state of Oklahoma. It's a good clear field variety, has the 2 genes for herbicide resistance that we want, but the background that it's in is just stellar in terms of agronomics and quality. That's great for the producer, but it's tough on the breeder to find a superior alternative to that, and it's been since 2013 that we had double stop be released. We have a couple of candidates that we're showing today at the Lahoma tour that have made it to the top, and we're just seeing that they have enough to go over the top. The one that has been under foundation seed production now for a couple of years is the one we call 12912C. It's been reselected, so it has a bunch of numbers after that. But what I like about this is it has the yield potential of double stop and the quality, a slightly higher yield potential, but more importantly, earlier maturity. If there's anything I've wanted to improve upon with double stop, would just make it earlier. Everything else stay the same. This is an earlier maturing double stop. In fact, the pedigree is 75% the same as double stop. So they look very much alike, but this will finish earlier, no doubt.
Let's talk about the white wheat varieties.
Yes.
What you're working on, and then kind of what the market scenario is right now.
We're working on something that will be competitive with not only our own, which is Stardust, a 2016 release, but also some other really good wheat varieties out there in the market. One from Kansas State University called Joe. So with Joe, you've got really good disease resistance and high yield potential. And the quality is acceptable, but it could be improved upon. So we have 3 options with the white wheat. This is our highest yielding option, the 16729W. Actually, it has some soft red winter germplasm in it from LSU. And that may sound a little bit odd, but we actually breed quite a bit with soft red winters. The fact that we got a hard white out of this cross is a little bit unusual, but we'll take it. Probably our highest yielding option right there, but our lowest quality. So, but that's a statewide variety too. This one is more targeted for the panhandle. We'd like to have something panhandle and north central Oklahoma adapted, but this is strictly targeted for the panhandle. A bullet derivative has Australian germplasm in it. That's a little bit unusual to end up with something adapted to the panhandle that comes from Australia. But again, genetics can do some really crazy things sometimes for us. Probably our best overall option. Best suited for north central Oklahoma is a hard white, competes right along with those hard reds. Will compete very well with Joe and Stardust, of course. Is this, I just call it 6W for short. Look at the canopy on it. This is a beautiful disease-resistant, overall disease-resistant package that rivals anything we have in the hard red winter side. So we have some really good choices to make. Here we have something that I think is going to help us deal with change. This is a rock-solid genetic package for barley yellow dwarf. I think once we get the package put together into a high-yielding background, it's going to stick. Now we finally had the high-yielding background combined with quality. The 3 options are right here in front. The one in the middle, 16D101089, is probably overall our best one, but we need time to figure this out, and we need it this year, and I think we're going to get it this year, just the information we need. But you can see the canopy on this variety. It looks like a fungicide has been applied to it, but it hasn't. This has dealt with the diseases common to this field: leaf rust, stripe rust, septoria, tan spot, powdery mildew. And this is what it's done. It's pushed back against all of those. We didn't have barley yellow dwarf, but had we had it, we would have seen the same canopy. So we're really, really high on this one. This is a duster grandson. We brought in germplasm, the gene donor for barley yellow dwarf resistance, other than what's in duster, came from Purdue University. But I think what's giving us the yield kick and the quality kick is Bentley. Bentley was crossed to that duster derivative, and this is what we have.
Quite a family here.
Yes, it is.
With varieties with familiar names, as well as with your fellow scientists at other land grants, it sounds like.
Yes, it takes a cooperative effort, not just at our university with the Weed Improvement Team, but all throughout the land.
Well, Dr. Carver, it's always great to, touch base with you, and we share your enthusiasm, so please keep us posted with everything.
Will do.
Okay.
Thanks for allowing me to update you.
Thanks a lot.
Gluten, gluten-free, and celiac disease are terms that you may have heard of or wondered about, and wondered how many people do they actually impact? Gluten is a mixture of proteins that occur naturally in wheat, rye, barley, and crossbreeds of these grains. And the concern is that people who have celiac disease might inadvertently eat a food that contains gluten. Celiac disease occurs when the body's immune system reacts to gluten by causing inflammation and damage to the lining of the small intestine, which can affect the absorption of nutrients. As many as 3 million people in the United States have celiac disease. That's almost 1% of the entire U.S. population. FDA has determined that products that have less than 20 parts per million gluten should not be harmful to people that suffer from celiac disease. So FDA regulations allow packaged food that is purchased at retail to be labeled gluten-free if it contains less than 20 parts per million gluten. The FDA allows manufacturers to label a food gluten-free as long as the food does not contain any of the following. 1, an ingredient that is any type of wheat, rye, barley, or crossbreeds of these grains. 2, an ingredient derived from these grains that has not been processed to remove gluten. Or 3, an ingredient derived from these grains that has been processed to remove gluten if it results in the food containing 20 or more parts per million gluten. The majority of people in the United States can consume gluten without any issues. However, the gluten-free labeling laws are there to protect those individuals that may be adversely impacted. For more information, please visit sunup.okstate.edu or visit fapc.diz or download the FAPC app.
Well, there was some excitement in the grain markets this week. So Kim, what's going on?
Well, we had a 17-cent increase in corn prices. Some people were saying that brought wheat prices, but we got a 21-cent increase in the wheat. You know, at the latter part of the week, it backed off a little bit. Hopefully what we have here is not a dead cat bounce.
So what's some information you were able to glean from the WASDE?
Well, if you look at the WASDE that came out last Friday, I think the market evaluated that. Slightly higher wheat production and ending stocks. You look at record world wheat production, record world wheat ending stocks. You got corn, the production relatively high, the ending stocks high. You look at wheat for the 1920 marketing year, they're projecting $4.70 for an average price for the year, compared to $5.20 this year, $4.71 in 17. Remember in 17, even though the U.S. price was $4.71, Oklahoma price averaged down near $4, and that was because of quality, and I think that points out the importance of quality. Corn was projected to be $3.30, below the $3.50 this year, and about equal to the $3.31 in 17.
So what about all those countries hanging out in the Black Sea region?
Well, if you look at the Black Sea region, the projections there are, well, the USDA has Russian production at about 2.8 billion bushels. Russia's got their production at 2.9 to 3.0 billion. Ukraine, higher production. Their stocks are relatively tight right now, but it looks like they're going to have good crops, and they're going to continue to control that export market.
So what's the overall message that you would say to producers?
I think producers should expect low prices this next year unless we lose a crop in the Black Sea region.
All right, thanks, Kim. And now back to Lahoma with our ag policy specialist, Amy Hagerman, with some information about insurance policies.
We're joined by Amy Hagerman, our ag policy specialist here at Lahoma. Amy, lots of news in your world. Let's start with dual use crop insurance and what kind of guidance you're giving producers.
Yeah, so this was actually a change in the Farm Bill that I think could be really good for our Oklahoma producers. What dual use crop insurance means is that producers can sign up for their rainfall index insurance, and they can sign up for a multi-peril grain insurance. So for our winter wheat stocker producers, that means that this summer they'll be able to sign up for crop insurance and for rainfall insurance if they're planning to graze stockers on that land. The sign up, the sales closing date on that is probably going to be mid-July for planting that's going to happen from July 16th to October 15th. The good news about this policy for our Oklahoma producers is if we get some dry times and the rainfall index insurance will pay off and the grain insurance will pay off too. They can get payments under both if they choose to go that direction. The thing they need to evaluate is whether it makes sense for them to pay 2 premiums on their insurance. So I recommend they talk to their crop insurance agent, get the details on that, and find out if that makes sense for them.
What is happening in the way of ARC and PLC? Just kind of give us the rundown there and what the latest is.
Yeah, so we've gotten a little bit of news on Arkin PLC, specifically regarding land and grass that has crop base. Now you'll recall we've talked in previous segments about how in this farm bill, land that's in grass from 2009 to 2017 continuously with no covered commodities planted on that land at any point that's in a single FSA farm number may not be eligible for Arkin PLC enrollment this time around. That doesn't mean they lose their crop base, but they won't be able to sign up for Arkin PLC. That evaluation is happening by Farm Service Agency right now. So they're looking at your crop production history reports that you have filed for that time period, and they're determining whether or not you'll be eligible to enroll in Arkin PLC this fall. It's a pretty big deal for some of our producers here in Oklahoma. So we can expect to see letters on that coming out from FSA sometime this summer. And then hopefully that is going to be the first step to actually getting enrollments for Arkin PLC started, which I've seen some announcements say that that could happen as early as September 1.
So deadlines, there's a lot to keep track of. What's the best way to stay organized?
You know, I think just making sure you get all your crop production history reports in with FSA. Make sure you're talking to your FSA agent, your NRCS agent, your crop insurance agent, and your banker to make sure you've got everything lined out for all of these different areas, because not only do we have the changes in Arkin PLC and crop insurance, but we also have the changes in the FSA loan limits that occurred in April. So just keep the communication lines open. That's really the best thing I can say. Make sure you're staying up to date on all of these deadlines, getting all your reporting in. It's going to be a busy year.
Definitely. Good thing we have you too. Okay, Amy, thanks for the update, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.